10 things I've learned using the 1921 census every day for a year. There are thousands of possible search combinations. Really, the possibilities are endless. I have found people I didn't even have a name for using the various fields and search capabilities that Findmypast is built for this census. Really, they are very powerful, and the opportunity is nearly endless. There are thousands of combinations. The maps are incredibly detailed. They were scanned at a really high resolution, so you can zoom in and out to get as detailed as you like. It's a great way to get a quick snapshot of the community, the area in which your ancestor was living, what was around them, what wasn't around them. And it's especially important if you're unfamiliar with the area. And I've also found it really useful when I'm researching in metropolitan areas, right? Understanding where the actual closest church was, where the facilities were that they needed. The maps have been an incredible help. The address search is amazing, and that opens a ton of research opportunities, opens the door for research for a lot of us. But make sure that you're also using the geolocator tools. It's the type ahead in the location box in the search screen. So when you're putting in where you think they were in 1921 or where they were born, use that type ahead feature to help you identify locations as they were listed in the census. Of course, you can use the address search to compare to 1911 and the 1939 register, so you can really get the full perspective of what that address was doing historically over the whole period from 1911 before World War I through the interwar years and then into the start of World War II. Searching for the titled or the gentry sometimes requires a little bit of creative thinking. They would often write themselves into the census as Lord and Lady instead of using their given names or their actual surname, right? So use a little bit of creative thinking with that. Try searching for Lord and Lady in a particular area or matching it with a search for the name of the estate as an address. You'll find it a little bit easier than potentially using their birth names when locating them in the census as adults. Nearly everyone who completed the census was confused by the dependency grid in 1921. It's to the far right of the household return, and it is confusing. If you read the instructions, it's a little bit unclear, really, how they were supposed to fill that in, which means that there are a lot of mistakes in the dependency grid, and we can use that to our advantage. Right? Seeing how they filled it in might give you more information than what was formally asked for. So take advantage of those mistakes. You want to make sure that you're analyzing all those little bits of information on the census, and that means that kind of reading underneath the marked out information from the enumerator or the census office, you want to see what your ancestor actually wrote in their handwriting, and often that dependency grid is a great place to look for those errors. The dependency grid wasn't the only place where mistakes were made, and often these errors, again, will lead to great research opportunities for us. So look for any other marks around the page. I've seen censuses where instead of writing the year they were born, or their age rather, they wrote in the year that someone was born instead of 64 years old, they would write in an actual year. I've seen census returns where the mistakes are in the variation of the names, or someone who was normally in residence at the household but wasn't there that night, right? Those kinds of errors are actually, again, to our advantage. We can use those as hints and additional further information to study our ancestors. Always, 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 always look at the address on the front of the household return. Those addresses were addressed and they were labeled to the person who was supposed to fill out the census, right? The presumed head of household, but that isn't always the person who filled it out. Maybe that person wasn't there that night. It was filled in by their teenage daughter. Maybe someone else considered themselves head of household and they filled it in anyway, right? We can interpret a lot about the dynamics of a particular home and family by understanding how the household was perceived and then how the census was actually completed. I have found it really useful to compare the handwriting in the 1921 census to that in the 1911 census. In a couple of cases, I've actually been able to confirm the identity of a particular person I'm looking for by comparing the handwriting. Now, I'm not trained in this skill, but even a casual observation of the unique style of writing a particular letter can help us confirm or deny an individual, someone that we're looking for, or potentially that it is actually a very different person, right, by the same name. So using that handwriting analysis, even a casual one, can lead you to additional resources and allow you to at least continue your hypothesis in your research. When you are examining a census document, it's important to understand everything on the page. So the codes, the little notes and comments that the enumerator or the office, the staff at the census office made on the document, those are telling us something. So a thorough examination of every census means that we are looking back and understanding what those codes actually mean and what do they represent. You want to make sure that you understand not just what your ancestor filled out in particular, but actually all of the elements of the census to make sure that you're getting every little bit of detail and information out of that collection. I, out of habit, look at the occupation codes almost as my first action now when I open a new census return. It's just immediate that you need to understand those occupation codes and the other information that was left by the census office. When you're examining a record set, really any record set, but particularly something like the 1921 census, it's important that you lean and rely on the community. We need to be asking questions of each other so that we can learn from each other. And my experience and my expertise may be different than yours. So there's an opportunity there to engage with each other and create a wealth of shared knowledge, particularly because this is a brand new record set. We've only had access to it for a year, and we're all learning about it at the same time. So rely on the community, use that as a tool to help further your research, and contribute as well, right? We need to be learning from each other as we explore the 1921 census.